Ready to roll?
Yeah, looks like we are good to go.
Okay, well, good afternoon to our NBA members in the Central Time Zone. Good morning to our NBA members in the Mountain Time Zone. Thank you for joining us. If we haven't met yet, I am Jim Tim, the President and Executive Director of the Nebraska Broadcasters Association. Very pleased today to be joined by Juan Galdamez of Xperi. Thank you all for signing up to participate in this webcast. It's going to be very informative. Look, we all know that there's a lot of changes already happening in the automotive dashboard or the screen. There are more coming, and I don't know anyone better than Juan to show you what's happening now, what's coming. And additionally, he's going to show you before we're done here a service that they offer free of charge that if you're not already taking advantage of it, you probably should. And something a little bit different about this webcast, I think most of the ones that we've taken in lately, you listen, you watch, and then you raise your hand at the end. Juan is doing this differently. So as you have questions, as we go along, please drop them in the chat box. And Juan kind of likes to weave the questions in as he goes with the presentation. So thank you all for being here. At this time, Juan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Jim. And thank you, everybody, for joining. This is something that we are very excited about when we look at the connected vehicle, and something I'm very excited to review with everyone here. As Jim mentioned, feel free to throw your questions in the chat as they come about. I find that tends to help everyone on the call. And also, we don't want you to forget your questions. And I'd like to try to make this as interactive as possible in a webinar environment. So keep the questions coming. As we see them, I will tackle those questions. So we're going to talk about the connected car today. And so let's get started. Let's see here. There we go. So quick intro for those of you who may or may not be familiar with us at Xperi. Some of you might be familiar with some of the old companies, Ubiquity specifically, where we were focused solely on HD radio. As a company, though, we have evolved tremendously in the broadcast technologies that we're delivering today. We're going to really focus and talk about DTS auto stage and that kind of hybrid radio environment and what that looks like and what does it mean when we talk about that in the connected car. And many might be familiar with the HD radio side. Won't go into too much detail there. And then we do some music metadata and app connectivity and platform development for stations, and then metadata as well. So quite a broad depth of broadcast technologies, but all really focused on the user experience or the listener experience inside the car primarily, but also across devices. So when we talk about the connected car, just to give a little context, right? So to understand who the heck am I, who the heck is Xperi, and why can we speak to this? We've been working with the automotive industry for over 20 years on the deployment of HD radio, right? We're working with every auto manufacturer shipping cars in North America on the deployment of that. And every tier one supplier that provides those radios and builds those radios for OEMs. We've been working with every single one of them for over 20 years. And so we have the relationships, we have the understanding of what's going on. Several years ago, conversations started to arise and we started to realize that broadcast really needed to step up what it can deliver for the experience inside the car, right? It's all about the user experience, and we'll see why that is in a second. But we started to realize what's going on in the car. And so we started to really work on this and work with the industry and come up with a solution that we'll really share with you all in a bit. We've shipped over 100 million cars with technology, and specifically around HD radio. That's primarily most of it. I'm sure to many of you, no need to really dive too deep into this. I think we all know that the vehicle is changing. The way our listeners are engaging with our stations and engaging with our content is evolving dramatically. And so this is just a quick snapshot of cars that are actually on the road today. So these screens are just continually increasing in size. And so again, the content and the user experience needs to fill these screens in order for it to be a great experience. This is an example of the Sony Vision car. If people are familiar, a little bit of drama, being dramatic, putting this in here. But the idea here is what you can see here is that technology companies and automotive manufacturers are rethinking how cars are going to be in the future, right? The screen taking the width of the vehicle, right, from pillar to pillar is 100% coming. Mercedes already has an implementation that's almost the whole width of the car that's on the road today, but the screens are increasing in size, right? And what that means for radio and what that means for the industry is that we have to really focus on delivering the best content to these screens, right, and to the vehicle. And when that, in referencing that, that's, metadata, and making sure that when a listener is tuned to a station in the vehicle like this, that we're filling that screen with compelling content. Because if we're not, auto manufacturers are going to, replace the solution or figure out something else to fill that screen. They're not putting these in the car for them to remain giant empty displays. Another little piece, this is something we did with Byton, but this you can see again the width of the screen, the size of the screen being pretty don't check questions, nothing there. Feel free, everyone, please don't be shy. I think you can do it anonymously too, so don't hesitate to type in a question. Another one as well, this is an example of the Apple CarPlay card that was announced later last year. I believe it was like September of last year during their developer conference. And this is their vision of where the car might be going, right? And in the next kind of future iteration of CarPlay, right? But you see these larger displays, you see all of this content there, all of this, space and the real estate getting filled up with things. So that leads us to, the approach that we are taking and that we have been working with various bodies in the industry and around the world on what that means for radio and how can radio be competitive in this dynamic and rapidly evolving space. And that leads us to what we call DTS Auto Stage. DTS Auto Stage is taking, it's a hybrid radio approach. So we're taking the over-the-air radio signal and we're coming over the top with the internet connection to enhance the experience. And we'll look at what that actually looks like, right? But what we're utilizing is we're celebrating and maximizing the efficiency and the reach that broadcast as a medium has to connect with the masses with delivering content, but then use that internet connection to just take it up a whole nother level, right? Take that user experience even further. So just keep that in mind because this is still using over-the-air broadcast in its delivery. It's something we launched in 2020. Our launch partner was Mercedes. To this day, they have, I think, 5 models or something like that on the road. And again, it's combining broadcast radio, FM and AM, and HD radio, with internet delivered services and content in the vehicle. What that does is it makes sure that every radio station is completely, every radio station has a great user experience, right? And again, we'll look at that in another second. And then on the last point, the analytics and things like that gets really exciting. And we'll talk about that in a few seconds. So this is what it looks like, right? When we're talking about a great user experience and improving it or making sure that these screens are filled with content when it comes to broadcast radio. In the car today, in Mercedes, you can go to the vehicle and you can go to the FM dial. And what you can see is a carousel of station logos when you want to tune, right? You can, as a user, scroll through this carousel and see a station logo for every radio station in that market. Right? If you're a digital station with HD radio, obviously you can do that today and send that over the air to many other manufacturers. But if you're an analog station, you don't have that ability to do that. And that's where we use that internet connection, right? And where we think that the best approach is to take the over-the-air signal and use that internet connection for that logo delivery, right? And that's its simplest way when we talk about maximizing the internet connection or using the internet connection in conjunction with the broadcast. But so you can see you've got station logos here for every station in the band. In addition to just logos, right? So you have station logos, but metadata is pretty broad when we talk about when it comes to radio or over the air. We've also got now playing metadata, right? Now, obviously, today you can send song artists and album title and album artwork along, via HD radio, but with RDS, you can't send that imagery, right? So another use case of where we use that internet connection to enhance the experience is in a situation like this, where you can tune to the radio station and you're listening to the song, in this case, a Luke Combs song, and you see imagery of the artist or album art populate so that you have that rich visual experience, and that you can have it on an analog station and not just a digital station. All right, let's see. 1 second. I'm just checking. Got a couple different questions here real quick. So does the station have to be broadcasting in HD or AM stereo to employ auto stage? That's a great question. So actually, DTS auto stage is open to all stations, right? It is the best approach for broadcasters to participate and support their experience and change the experience inside the car in Mercedes and some of the others that we'll talk about. But absolutely not. You absolutely do not have to be broadcasting with HD. And arguably, if you're analog, you should 100% sign up and participate in DTS Auto Stage. As Jim mentioned, it's completely free. So it's the one way that you can dramatically impact how your listeners today are tuning to your station with vehicles on the road. There are vehicles on the road today with this technology. Let's see this 1 second, y'all. In regards to analog and HD, we kind of talked about that on this other question. So I think we're good. Get rid of this. 1 second. Getting back to this. So in addition to Mercedes, at the end of last year, about the October timeframe, we announced a launch with Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis. So the Hyundai brands released DTS Auto Stage in 20 or 30, I forget the number of models deployed with them. But so now today, there are vehicles from each of those brands driving around with DTS Auto Stage. And what you see here is, unlike the Mercedes, where you had that carousel, you have more of a static display of metadata here for that station. But what you also see here is you see a station list of the station, you see logos for each station, and you even see the slogan for that station underneath all of that other data, right? And so this is all just yet another example of how we can just take that internet connection and improve the experience for the station or for the listener inside the vehicle, being able to update the experience inside of the vehicle for that. It's also important, I think one of the other big characteristics, or one of the other things that, when I talk to broadcasters about the vehicle and we kind of go through things, is what you'll notice between this experience and this experience, even though it's using some of the same technology, it's night and day. It looks completely different. And you'll find that when you go into other vehicles and you sit in other brands and you go in and hop in a Mercedes or a Toyota or a Hyundai or VW, you will see that everything is different. How they build their radios and the content that they use and what they're looking for in their radio approach. So yeah, one key thing to check out. Another brand that we can't really call out, but you're probably familiar by looking at this, is another brand that actually recently, towards the end of last year, started to roll out vehicles with DTS Auto Stage. You can see here, if you're familiar with the radio experience here, previously in this vehicle, it used to be a station list. It was call letters and frequency, and that was about it. But now they've started to roll out updates where they're utilizing that IP connection from DTS Auto Stage to go ahead and send station logos. So it's a much more visual tuning experience inside of the car. right? So again, just another way that we're still using the over-the-air broadcast signal for the content delivery, but we're just tapping into that internet connection that in all these vehicles is already there to enhance the radio experience overall, right? Just by sending station logos. And I don't have a picture of it. I wish I did, and we'll work to get one. But when you look at the experience in this vehicle prior to what we're doing and the work that we're putting in, when you look at it, you know, from pre-launch to where it's at today, the radio experience is completely different. It is night and day. Will blow your mind how dramatic of a difference it is. And just simply by adding station logos into that list is super compelling. So let's see here. I got a couple questions. So I assume you'll explain the implementation for non-HD stations. Also, if you're offering this service at no charge, how in the world are you funding it? That is a very popular question, and I appreciate that question, and thank you for sharing that, Eben, I believe. So the first part of your question, for non-HD, we can get into that, or I'll share something about that if some station wanted to participate. I'll share that a little bit later. And also people can get in contact with me if it is something to pursue further, if people are interested in it. In terms of the no charge and how do we fund it, again, very valid question and appreciate it. So it's very similar to how we operate with HD radio, in the sense that when an automotive manufacturer produces a radio with it, the payment happens that way. So again, that's how everything is funded with the service. That's how we maintain everything. That's how we keep all of our servers and everything around the world operational. But it comes from the automotive manufacturer. The only difference, obviously, on the HD side, there's a little bit more licensing and broadcast components to it. That portion doesn't really exist here with AutoStage, because AutoStage is really just mostly IP delivered, right? Because we're still using the over-the-air signal. And we've done the mapping and the pairing of the tuner inside the vehicle, and we've connected the internet piece of that and doing all of the back-end build out for this system. Right. So all of that's really just kind of non-hardware based at that point. So for a station non-HD or analog station, there's nothing really too crazy to participate in, and no hardware required really. Hopefully that helped you, Ivan, and everybody else. If you have any other, let me know. The other one is this seems to create a situation where users don't have to seek and see what stations are available. Instead, they can see the list and jump to a station that interests them without seeking through the dial. That's interesting. So the reality is that already exists today. You can get into a car today and you can see a station list, right? When I get into my 2017 Volkswagen, I can go to a station list on FM and I can see every station that's available, right? And as far as I've known, so many other brands do this. This isn't, something that's unique in terms of a station list. I guess to the point of this, some of that is really, we're enhancing that station list and making sure that the best content is available in that station list, right? And that all stations look as best as possible, in a hope that, maybe there are new stations to be discovered. Now, the question will pop up every now and then about, well, you might see my competitor or things like that. They'll see them on a station list and they'll see the slogan for the station and might find out there's another station that plays something very similar. There's really no way to avoid that. The reality is, if broadcasters don't deliver more content to the vehicle, there are a whole bunch of other challenges, right? So it's super critical that when a listener is in the vehicle and they're listening to the radio, that they have the most impressive and the best visual experience possible. Loosely, but the best experience possible that manufacturer is delivering. If that's station logos, if that's now playing information, if that's station slogans, things like that. But it's super imperative that we deliver as much as we can to the vehicle, and arguably as well. You can jump, in a car today and listen to a radio station halfway around the world in 2 seconds, right? And so all of these services, streaming apps and and you look at the tune-ins and the Pandoras and things like that, they're all delivering this sort of metadata to the vehicle, right? We're not talking about anything right now that's super, this will sound bad, but it's not anything that's like overly groundbreaking right here, right? Because we're talking about logos and album artwork and text, right? But what is groundbreaking about DTS Auto Stage and what's groundbreaking about our approach is that we're bringing these simple feature sets and these simple experiential updates to broadcast radio, right? Broadcast radio cannot deliver this today outside of HD, right? Station logos and album artwork can only be delivered over broadcast via HD. So that's what makes this unique. And we'll talk about something else even further when we talk about this IP connection. So hopefully that helps. B&D, that was you, buddy. We got you. Any idea of how many non-HD cars are still on the road? Said differently, how deep is RDS in the market? Also, how far down the road will most car makers adopt this tech? So in terms of non-HD, that's a whole nother side conversation, and I don't want to bog it down in this. Brad, feel free to reach out and we can take a look at that. We have some rough estimates of cars of the number of HD, not necessarily non-HD, that are on the market or that are in your markets and things like that. So we have a rough estimation that we can do for it. Arguably last year, over 55%, I think, of the new cars sold last year had HD, right? So the number is changed dramatically. Now that varies when you get to markets. But over half of the cars sold last year had it. And the year prior, I think it's been like that for the last couple of years. So it's reaching a pretty good adoption. In terms of RDS, I think that's probably pretty much all of them. I don't know of a car or a vehicle that has non-RDS in the vehicle. All right. Thanks, guys. Keep it coming. Okay. So even further, right, we're talking about, I just kind of referenced it. Sorry. Even going a little bit further, right, I've already referenced this, right? We've been talking about kind of normalized metadata, right? Now, playing information, station logos, slogans, and things like that. Now that we've built this connection into the radio, and now that we have this internet connection, we can really start to expand the opportunities and look at what other services can we add to broadcast radio in the car. Late last year, we worked with Mercedes to roll out lyrics to songs on the radio, right? Where you're listening to the radio and you have the opportunity here to view the lyrics for that song on the radio, right? Now, obviously, the car being in parked, rear seat entertainment, things like that, right? But this is a great example of how we can take that internet connection and really look at new ways to evolve the broadcast experience inside of the car. This rolled out late last year, early this year, I believe, on several models. But this is just the first of many, where we are thinking about this and where we're working with other members of the industry on how can we go even further, right? We know that broadcasters are producing podcast content, right, and producing all sorts of other content. How can we make that content available to the broadcast experience in the car, right? If you're listening to Juan in the morning and it's coming to the end of my show, wouldn't it be cool if my radio could tell me, could tell the listener to listen to yesterday's podcast, and that listener can then continue consuming the station content without doing something else, right? There's a lot, discussions and things around video or other on-demand content, weather alerts or news snippets and things like that. But the idea here and the hope that you'll at least walk away with or understand here is that really this is just the groundwork and the foundation for something that's going to be so much better, right? Now that internet connection is there, it has opened up the doors of what we can do. And there is so much in the pipeline, in the queue of what we might be able to do to take radio even further, right? To do lyrics, to do events. If you're listening to a rock station and you want to, you're listening to a rock station and you want to see what rock events might be coming up this weekend, and you're looking for something. Is there a way to do that? Right. Things like that. You're listening to a specific artist on the radio. Could you potentially have a ticket transaction when listening to that song, and opportunities for revenue, with broadcasters and things like that. So really, to look at it this way, it's really, this is the first step of really cool things that we're looking to do when it comes to broadcast in the car. Question on the playing field, and has it changed, and time to adjust the playbook? I mean, here's the thing, right? Again, I think everybody here is well aware, everybody who's at least listening, that the car is evolving dramatically. I think we all know you can get into your car and listen to whatever radio station or podcast or on-demand music service that you want. So it's definitely becoming easier. There's absolutely no question. The good thing, broadcast radio is still number one, right? We know, and even auto manufacturers know, they know that their drivers or their listeners or their customers are listening to broadcast radio in a car, right? Or in the car. And so we know that listenership is there, but it's really about taking the user experience even further, right? Because again, these screens are getting larger and larger, right? And I know I keep focusing on that screen and the user experience, right? But I cannot, these screens are getting bigger and they're not going to leave them blank, right? And so when someone's listening to the radio and you have this big screen and you have this little line of stuff on the screen, they're not going to tolerate that. They're not going to accept that, right? Because they're going to figure out how to make a better user experience for their customers. And so we believe it's super critical to expand what broadcast can deliver. And that's why our approach is broadcast first, using broadcast audio, and then using that IP over the top. But absolutely, I mean, it's definitely evolving. The competition is real. There's absolutely no question that all of the big tech groups that you can think of, or services or audio services you could think of, are 100% coming after the vehicle. They want to win the vehicle. They want to pull from the broadcast experience. But, we believe broadcast and IP to the vehicle is the way to keep broadcast radio competitive. And we think it's the best solution for the industry. And arguably, proving to be, widely accepted. We've got Mercedes, we've got Hyundai, Kia, Genesis launch, and we'll talk about a couple more, and this other brand. And I actually think I might have missed that on this one question, but the adoption of DTS AutoStage is very, very good. And we've got a healthy pipeline. We've got a lot of interest because, again, OEMs understand that radio listening does occur in their vehicles, and they want to ensure that they have the best experience. Very long-winded, but hopefully that helped. But exciting. If you get a chance to go to a Mercedes dealership, you can see this in real life. It is a feature that's been deployed, but you can go to a dealership and hop in a car that has one of these updated MBUX platforms, and you should be able to see the lyrics with the songs on the radio. One other additional question, and I'll hop on and we'll get to some more in a minute. From an implementation standpoint, how do you send information to the screen like you are showing the lyrics now? Yeah, so basically how it works is we know what's happening with the song on the radio, right? When a station is integrated into AutoStage, right? We know what's being played on the radio, right? We know that this Luke Combs track is on the radio, and we've worked with other service providers to find services like this, right? Like lyrics or other things, or done it ourselves in some cases, but we're working with other third-party providers securing that content, right? I mean, that's a part of, kind of the funding question, right? This is, the automotive piece is how all of this gets funded, but working with these other services to come over the top with the broadcast experience. So we do it through the kind of the overall infrastructure and the setup. The broadcaster has to do nothing related to this. The only thing that the broadcaster would do is really just get directly participating into DTS AutoStage and providing the content that we're looking for that I'll talk about. And that's all that you need to do. Matching of the lyrics and things like that, that is all on our service and what we do. So hopefully that answered your question, Andy, thanks again for the question. Hopping into it. So even more, so I think what we just talked about is very exciting. Arguably, though, from a broadcaster's perspective, this might be even more exciting. One of the other great things about what we're doing with DTS Auto Stage is broadcast as a medium is one way, right? You're sending analog audio or you're sending digital audio over HD radio. You're sending that audio over a one-directional communication, right? So FM, digital FM is one way. But now that we've actually connected the internet with the broadcast experience, we now actually have a two-way communication back to the vehicle, right? So we're now able to understand a little bit more about what's going on with your station when it comes to the vehicle, right? Being able to understand a little bit more about what's going on, the listening patterns, the listening habits of the radio station inside the car, right? Because that's coming from the internet connection inside the car, right? The internet connection associated with the service. And we've actually, we've done the mapping with all of the tuner and we've got the internet connection. So merging them together, we really start to understand radio inside the vehicle. So this is all a preview. So later this quarter, I think we're shooting for about the middle to end of March. So basically to the end of the quarter. But at the end of the quarter, we'll be releasing our analytics and metrics that we're making available to stations who are participating, right? So through the Auto Stage service, what stations are able to start to see is a little bit of their reach and understanding the audience growth and what's happening with this the listeners in their market with who's listening. Being able to look at our daily charts or daily flows, your reach within the market of what's actually happening when it comes to your specific station inside the car. Even more so, being able to understand where your listenership is coming from, right? Being able to look at where are your listeners kind of centralized within your market. Now, a couple points to this. Everything is anonymized, right? We won't know that this is Jim's Mercedes or Juan's Kia, right? We'll only know that it's a listening tuner or it's a listening radio within the vehicle and that stuff, right? So we won't have any demographic data. And this is the first iteration of this, right? So this is early days for what we're doing in this space, right? But this is meant to really, this is kind of the value exchange for participating in DTS Auto Stage, right? The service is free, and you're sharing content with us, right? You're sharing your metadata, you're sharing your stream, you're sharing things like that. And in return, there's a level of metrics that get displayed back or sent back to the broadcasters who are directly participating. This isn't anything to replace any metrics or anything that you're doing today or tomorrow. This is really just one other data source, right? Very much like your digital analytics for your website, right? This is just the data source that comes in to support your overall understanding of listeners, right? This should not replace anything. This should just be complementary to whatever you have going on. Couple questions. When will lyrics be available? So lyrics are already available today. You can go to a Mercedes dealership today and hop in some of their newer cars, and you should be able to see lyrics to songs on the radio. So that is already running today. See here, this anonymous one, look, in no way is it meant to replace anything that you're doing, like I said, right? This is a subset of cars that are on the road today. So in no way should it be something that replaces anything that you've got going today. Andy's back with another one. I work for a talk radio station with pre-recorded programs that we have title and description metadata for. Can we, as the broadcaster, send that metadata instead of a third-party solution? So what we do is, for a station that wants to participate, so yes, you can send your metadata coming through for DTS Auto Stage. The issue will be, assuming you're sending it out over broadcast. If you're not sending it over broadcast, the way the system is designed, broadcast will always trump IP, right? So if you're sending metadata over broadcast, that's going to take over for it. What you could do is you could send show logos, right? So if you've got, like you said, a talk station, you got a talk segment or a talk show, you can send that show logo and that show logo could appear for sure. I've been in vehicles with AutoStage for public stations, and you're looking at it and you're seeing the morning edition or the ATC pop up during it. So you could do that. Have to look a little bit further exactly what you're doing, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, what we do is we tap into automation. We have a push out from automation to an API that you can do. And that's how the easiest way to link up. There are other services, third-party solutions as well, that you can implement and streamline all of it as well and make it easier for you to do. So completely up to you, but for sure you can do that. But definitely reach out if you want to chat through it a little bit further. We can look at that. Many cars have seat settings, driver 1, 2. Could demographic data be obtained from the driver setting engaged at any given time? Potentially. Then that would mean that this service is no longer free. That's a great question, Charlie. The issue with that would be, auto manufacturers are going to be looking for money. They're going to be looking to monetize that and want to sell all of that data, and that changes everything. And that data, I can assure you, is not cheap and will be extremely expensive. So for the time being, right now, we can't do demographic data. That also, so was a strategic approach, because when you get into a vehicle, right? When you get into a vehicle with DTS AutoStage, you go to the radio to turn it on any normal way that you would, right? You go to turn on the FM, and assuming you've given the vehicle the connection, or the vehicle already has the connection, the data would then just populate. But say you choose to turn the connection off, or you don't want the connection anymore, the radio would function the same way it normally would. If it's an HD radio, you would have your HD and your analog. And if it's just an analog radio, it would populate as an analog radio. It would work the exact same way. And the decision was to not have a registration or a barrier to entry into the experience, right? Because one of the things that listeners love about radio is that radio just works. It's free and it just works. And so we didn't want to create a barrier that would either prevent listeners from utilizing, radio or utilizing the service, but we wanted to make it as widely available as possible. But so for right now, no, your comment potentially, but for the time being, that's going to be very expensive. And again, it's not to say that down the road, no pun intended, we couldn't explore other things. This is really the early days of AutoStage. And I shouldn't say early days, because we've been working on it for years, but we're at a point now where manufacturers are launching it, and it's really getting interesting to see how we're evolving it. And the metrics that we're talking about here is one of the first big iterations that we're seeing. And then the lyrics as well, right? I mean, we could talk for hours about what other things could be done to the broadcast experience using that internet connection in the car, right? I mean, it's kind of endless as to what can be done. And so there's a lot of thought around it and a lot of interest in how to do it. And again, we're talking a lot about this, but we really do believe, and our firm belief is that this approach of broadcast and IP and working directly with broadcasters, not creating something on our own and doing it in a vacuum, but working directly with broadcasters, getting broadcasters to participate in the system, and getting them to take a little bit of ownership and making sure that their proper metadata is there, will be the best solution across the board, right? Metadata is always going to be accurate, and we can focus on the other things, while broadcasters can always make sure that their metadata is correct. BMW recently started charging a monthly fee to activate the heated seats in the certain models. Does this mean the days of, quote, free broadcast radio in the car may also be numbered? That is a very loaded question. One probably not for this, and maybe over a glass of wine or a beer. I think that the real story is that auto manufacturers, like every other business around the world, it's not even automotive, is looking for new ways to generate revenue, right? Everyone is looking for that. Automotive, insurance, everybody is looking for new ways to generate revenue. And there is a lot of momentum, and a lot of auto manufacturers do believe that tiering features and subscription features is the way to go, and is something that consumers can tolerate and something that consumers will do. And it is something that a lot of them are going down that path. To what level of features and what that means for radio, I am not the best to chat through that. But we, you know, obviously our hope and everything that we're hearing and everything that we're seeing so far, I think we're fine. But that is something that, again, it's not even automotive specific. In general, every business is trying to find new revenue streams, and this is their approach to it. They need a free layer of infotainment in the car. The expectation is that radio will always be free, local. Absolutely, it is. I mean, it's been for 100 years, free, local, and reliable and consistent, right? I mean, some of these markets, and especially when we look at Nebraska, right, you've got these stretches of commuting or routes that consumers go where really radio is the only thing that you can get. And radio is the only thing that you can listen to, right? And so, and as you all know, you know, in times of emergency, radio is one of the most reliable forms of communicating. So again, that's why our approach is to use broadcast for the audio delivery and use that internet connection for something so minimum. Another question. I also am not watching time. Okay, we're good on time. So has any work been done regarding driver distraction with all of this content coming to the car? Another great question, and a question that we get all the time. 100%, right? I mean, driver distraction is a real thing, and it is a serious thing. And it is important, and it's top of mind for all auto manufacturers. From my perspective, from my perspective, you know, we can't get bogged down too much into that, because the reality is these other services that they're deploying in cars are delivering some of this stuff that's arguably on par or potentially, you know, is equal or more distraction, right? What we want to do is we want to make sure that the auto manufacturer has everything they need for a great radio experience, right? And they're going to be the ones that ultimately will determine to what level they're comfortable with deploying technology in the car so that they meet whatever standards they have or whatever regulations in their market they have, right? We want to give every auto manufacturer, and that's what we're doing, the ability to make the best radio, right? You know, auto manufacturer A, you need high resolution logos, a streaming URL. You need now playing information. We've got you. You want social media accounts and websites and things like that. We've got it, right? That's the approach that we want to take, is that we want to give them everything they need, but then let them determine how to best build a radio for their product, right? And it's something that, you know, kind of goes back to you know, a lot of the learnings with HD radio. You know, our teams have been doing this for quite a while. And, you know, we learned very early on, and it's a question I still get today. Why isn't HD radio standard? Why does every HD radio look different in every car? I totally get it. It frustrates me to no end too. But we learned really early on that we can't dictate that each auto manufacturer is going to do it the way that they want to do it. And so that's, again, the approach that we've been taking with AutoStage. You know, I reference it kind of to a recipe, right? We have every ingredient that you need for a great radio recipe, right? We've got logos, station slogans, websites, social media, now playing, everything and anything under the sun for a radio station, right? And we're saying to each auto manufacturer, now go build a great radio, right? So we've got every ingredient you need for a great recipe. So go build it. And that's the approach. It's also, I actually just realized too, forgot to really cover. I mentioned the streaming URL, and it might be confusing people a little bit with reference to that. It's also important to note the streaming URL is really used for broadcast to IP stream or transitions, right? So we rolled it out with Mercedes. We rolled it out with Mercedes, where you're driving your vehicle in broadcast coverage. As you get to the edge of that broadcast coverage, let's let the listener have the ability to switch over to the stream inside of the vehicle, right? Why should they be limited to just the broadcast coverage? Let's give them the ability to continue listening to that station in the stream. You get back into broadcast coverage, have it transition back over to the broadcast, right? So that's the only way that we use stream. We don't do stream on demand, that sort of thing. So you can't get into your car and request a station somewhere else. It's only associated with that transition of broadcast to IP. All right. So today for DTS Auto Stage, again, we've been talking a lot about this, but again, we think that this is really, when it comes to the connected car, this is what we've been doing it for a while, and we're very positive and optimistic about where things are going. As mentioned, we launched the end of 2020, early 2021. We launched with Mercedes late last year. We added Genesis, Kia, and Hyundai, and that other fifth brand that you might have picked up on in one of those previous images. And then over the next 12 to 18 months, we've got another 7 brands in the queue where we're looking at other brands in the queue that are looking to deploy a DTS Auto Stage at various levels and features like that. And on top of that, using our background and using our experience in working with all of these brands, every single auto brand has seen DTS Auto Stage for the last, 2-3 years, right? We've been talking to them about what this is, what is our approach, and how are we building this, and how is it showing up. So there's a lot of pay attention. Hopefully you'll pay attention and you'll see, a lot more stuff going on with DTS Auto Stage and what we've got going on, and will at some point want to participate. If so, if you see value in it. Let's see, question from Eben again. That sounds like it turns broadcast radio into semi-satellite radio, right? Not really sure about the semi-satellite. I mean, satellite, right, is continuous, right? And you can listen to it wherever, and it's the same feed. I guess you could argue, right, the sense or the idea of listening to satellite radio wherever you are. Yeah, I mean, if you're driving and you're listening to broadcast coverage and you get to the edge of that coverage, transitioning to stream just further allows that listener to continue listening to your station, right? So it's taking the benefits of both environments. It's taking the benefit of broadcast and then using the IP connection to really improve on that listening experience and making it better for the listener. So I think, if you get into a Mercedes, you have to drive, it's a little bit hard to show that feature. But it is something that's live in Mercedes because you have to drive to the edge of coverage so you get to see that feature implemented. But definitely a lot of work going on in that space, and it's going to be improved on over time as well. There's a lot of challenges when it comes to delay between IP and broadcast. But we've got a lot of people working on that and how to improve on that transition. I know the NAB's got people. I know some broadcast groups around the world are looking at that. Like, everyone's trying to figure out that broadcast to IP stream. So a lot of interesting things going around there, but we think is a great feature, and it is something that and on top of that, it is a feature that actually is getting asked from automakers, right? Automakers are also telling us what their wish list is, right? Lyrics was partly because they want it. And so they come to us and we work with them to sort that out. Do you anticipate further adoption with some of the less luxury automaker models? I know you can't mention specific brands, but things like Ford, GM, Toyota, and Nissan. So I cannot mention specific brands, but Kia and Hyundai are very low entry model, right? They have higher end models as well, but they've got some lower end models that do it too. The reality too, though, is keep in mind, the first brands to always adopt technology are always the luxury brands, right? The first vehicle that came out with GPS and navigation, luxury models, right? The higher end brands are always the first to adopt technology, and then it starts to kind of spread as the technology becomes more advanced and it becomes maybe lower to implement, right? So that tends to be why, again, you'll see like the higher, transparent with HD and even with AutoStage, you've got these brands, because these are the brands that are pushing, all brands are, but these are some of the brands that are pushing forward in a lot of different ways. And so you're always going to see the higher end brands be the first to adopt technology, right? I mean, look at all the self-driving. It's all these brands, that are super expensive. You don't see it in a Corolla, right? So it's going to take time for some of those, but I can tell you that, some of the brands mentioned potentially might be on that list. And again, every brand, all those mentioned as well, have seen the technology and in some ways are experimenting with it or deploying it and working through it, right? And keep in mind too that automotive is a multi-year process, right? When it comes to technology deployment. However, with Hyundai, that actually was within a year, so pretty remarkable. But a lot of interesting things there. but stay tuned. You'll see some more exciting news from us in the next year. And shameless plug, if you'll be at State Leadership, if you'll be at NAB show, if you'll be at some of these larger industry events, definitely look out for us. We're there. We have cars there. We want to show you what the radios look like. And so we'll be there for sure. The IP stream connection is what I'm referring to. I think this was the question regarding the semi-satellite. I mean, yeah, again, we're using the IP connection in the stream to kind of take the experience and take the listening even further for the listener. We don't want to limit the listener to just broadcast coverage if we can avoid it, right? And so, so we see a lot of benefit, and there are a lot of auto manufacturers, like I said, who are 100% asking for it. Our dashboard. So I know I've talked a lot about AutoStage, and I know a lot of people have asked, your kind of comments about implementations and things like that. We have a dashboard. You get access to the dashboard. You control your metadata there. You get to see what we have for your stations. You get to see that we have all of your stations. And that's where, when we do release the metrics, that's where your metrics will be at, right? So everything lives through our dashboard, and that's where you actually manage everything. So next steps, and we're coming to a close here, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, sorry. The next steps, the first thing I always try to tell broadcasters and want to help everybody with is go to dealers. Go to some local dealers and check out some cars, but don't go to just one, go to a few. Go to a high-end dealer, go to a kind of more mainstream dealer, right? Go to a couple, hop in the cars, go find the radio, see what it's like to find the radio, and tune to some stations and see what some stations are doing, and see what your competitors doing, but see what non-competitors are doing too, right? I mean, see what other stations are doing and how they're utilizing technology to enhance their experience in the car, right? And a lot of it you'll see through HD, but please, it doesn't cost you anything. It's just time. Go get a coffee and see if you can call some clients and go pop into some dealers and just sit in some cars and really play with it. And if you get a chance, definitely swing by a Mercedes, because I think when you see the radio, or the experience, I should say, not radio, but just the experience they built, I think you might be blown away by it. It's pretty impressive. Metadata, make sure you're maximizing your broadcast metadata. Right? If you're analog station, make sure you're doing something with your RDS, even if it's just station information or now playing information, just make sure you're paying attention to it and that you're at least delivering something. I've talked to too many stations where, the RDS is down and it's been frozen for, 6 months, right? Don't do that. Get somebody to take a look at that and help you with that. There are third-party services out there that will help you streamline that management of that, and that can help fix that. And then, a lot of the encoders will do a lot of it on their own as well. But pay attention to that broadcast metadata, and especially if you're HD, don't just think just because you've gone digital and you're sending the audio is fine. Make sure you're doing station logo. Make sure you're sending your station logo, because there are a lot of brands that are doing artist experience and where your logo can pop up. My VW uses station logos delivered over HD for its presets. So even if you're digital, but you're not sending your logo, your preset is blank, but all of the other stations have their logos for presets. So definitely make sure that you're maximizing what you're doing today, especially around broadcast metadata, and pay attention to it. And then AutoStage, we've talked a lot about that. Hopefully what you've seen has been interesting and is something that gives you a little bit more excitement about radio's future in the car. Jim and I have spent some time talking about it and the importance of understanding more what's going on. And my hope is that by joining the discussion today, that you've had a chance to see that there's a lot of innovation going on in broadcast radio in the car, and that there are exciting things going on, and that, for us, we're very positive about broadcast radio in the car. And, we're excited about what radio can look like in the future, right? It's already over the last several years been looking really good with some of the deployments of HD and stuff. And even further, as you look at these radio experiences inside the Mercedes, the Hyundai, the Kias, we're just at the beginning where radio can really go up to a whole nother level. And again, as mentioned, it is completely free to participate. There's nothing about it. It's completely free. I think I have my email here. Feel free to screenshot if you want. Oh no, actually, this is actually a good slide here. so to participate in DTS Auto Stage, we look at data in 3 ways: static data, which is going to be your slogan, your logo, and things like that. Your streaming URL, and that's used for that blending between broadcast and IP. All of that's managed through the dashboard. And then the live data, that's the more complex data that is required in order to view analytics. But that can be done through automation pushes. If you've got a third-party provider for metadata and things like that, we could probably tap into that. We've got services that we've connected with that have streamlined that integration for stations. So there's all kinds of ways to do that as well. But once you're enrolled, that's it. You'll start to see the benefits. You'll see more and more cars coming about. When we release the analytics and things like that in the end of March, you'll get to be able to start viewing that for vehicles that are in your market and all of that sort. And then feel free to screenshot. My email is down here below. If y'all have any other questions regarding anything we've talked about, anything in the car, if you just want to talk about anything in the car that you've seen or of interest in, or want to learn more, anything Xperi related, feel free to reach out. Happy to help answer any questions. And especially, big fan of Jim and he does the good stuff with your state. So, happy to always support, a member of the organization as well. So, reach out.
Juan, thank you so much. This has been absolutely wonderful. To our members, thank you for participating, especially for asking so many questions. And it's great that you were able to answer, I think, every question that was posed. I imagine some folks will follow up with some more questions. Just a couple of quick observations before we close this. This time of year, I spend a lot of time between Omaha and Lincoln with our legislature in session. And so it was a very recent experience. On Tuesday, I drove my own car, which is 6 years old. And part of what I enjoy about any trip around Nebraska is, of course, listening to our member stations. But more recently, I find myself looking at how those stations appear on the screen of my car. Yesterday, I was back in Lincoln in a loaner car. Mine was in for service, a 2023 model. So versus my 2017 and this 2023, shocking differences in the appearance on the screen, obviously, but also interesting to see how some of our member stations appeared in my car versus how they appeared in the newer model. And so I think what happens for us, we're so used to monitoring other stations, for advertising leads, maybe a DJ you want to hire from that station, whatever the reason. But I can already predict, as a result of what you've done for us today, Juan, drive carefully, okay, but I think everyone on this call is going to spend more time looking at how stations are displayed on their screen. And that's what I was really hoping we could get across today. And Juan, I think you've done that. I want to thank you for your time with our members today. Your leadership in the industry has been tremendous. And I know you're riding the front end of this, and we're grateful for that. So thank you so much for making time to present this today. It's been wonderful.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate the time, Jim. And as always, happy to do anything else. Just let me know. And I think we'll make this available. I think we were recording it, so we'll make it available, and we'll send out an email or something like that. We'll get that sorted, give it to you, Jim, and you can distribute it. But yeah, thanks for the time, and yeah, good stuff.
Okay. Thanks, Juan.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Okay. We'll see you soon. Thanks.
Bye.